You can count when you're happy. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can count when you're sad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or count when you're frightened. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count when you're mad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Counting is wonderful. Counting is marvelous. Counting's terrific and how.
And once again, we open with a teaser that should telegraph the entire episode to the well-initiated. A dark and atmospheric hospital room, a brooding, shifty-eyed high school kid, an adult ripe for the killing. Pretty clear this kid's doctor is going to die before the opening credits in the most over-the-top and gruesome way possible. Yep. So this kid, Justin, was injured in a hit-and-run accident which paralyzed only his drawing hand to give him a motivation for murder. Because that's not convenient at all. And I'm assuming this accident had something to do with Meteor Rock, though I didn't catch any mention of it, because, as Justin explains to Chloe later, he gains telekinesis to compensate for his loss of motor control in the one hand. Because drawing is all he cares about, he goes nuts and kills his doctor for incompetence. Sounds like a great candidate for future supervillain, right? And then proceeds to pursue a romantic relationship with Chloe, who was his friend and pen pal for the 6 months he was in the hospital. And then to find the hit-and-run driver. In that order. Chloe, angry with Clark for forgetting to arrange their tickets for a journalism conference due to his Lana-induced tunnel vision, starts dating Justin and goes out of her way to stay completely on the outs with him. Justin reveals to her that he has telekinesis, and it takes all of 3 seconds for her to adjust to this, given all the Kryptofreaks she's seen so far. And, of course, there's no reason for her to be alarmed. What could possibly go wrong dating a 9th grade boy with raging hormones who just went through a tragic ordeal and can make anything happen just by thinking about it? Meanwhile, there's a subplot regarding Lex's old caregiver, whom Lex resents for running out on him after his mother died because she promised his mother to look after him while on her deathbed. She returns to try to make amends with Lex because she's dying now, though he doesn't know that, and he discovers that Lionel actually forced her out as part of his manipulative scheme to mold Lex into his ideal for a son with no one else's influence. Once he knows the truth, Lex forgives her. Now back to the gripping story of 15-year-old romance, it's just now, as he and Chloe aren't getting along, that Clark finally realizes that Chloe has feelings for him. If only he could have seen all the painfully obvious jealousy glares in previous episodes from the same angles we had to see them from. Now Clark decides he's interested in both girls, as any high school guy probably would, and Lex gives him the advice that if he stays concerned with preserving the friendships with both of them, he won't get either of them. In other words, the most proactive character of the show suggests to the least proactive character that maybe he should, make a choice and then do something about it. To which, in his typical fashion, Clark completely ignores and opts to instead continue reading Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Clark decides he regrets having missed that one big opportunity to start dating Lana, and of course starts getting jealous of Chloe's new boyfriend right away, even before he has any probable cause to suspect the guy of being a Kryptofreak or a killer. I mean, we know he killed his doctor, but Clark gets suspicious of him immediately, just because he sees a newspaper in Justin's bag about it. He says, who carries something like that around with them? I don't know, if somebody I knew pretty well was murdered and I picked up a newspaper about it, I could see putting it in my backpack and not taking it out for a while. Sorry, Clark, but forgetting to clean out your backpack isn't exactly a smoking gun. Then again, after Justin murders Principal Kwan, thanks to Chloe's help matching license plate numbers to figure out who ran him down, there's a lot of evidence that Justin did it, and now Chloe's logic in telling Clark there's no way he did it is about as stupid as Clark's initial logic that he must have been involved. Chloe assumes Clark's just making stuff up in a jealous rage. But then she finds a comic Justin drew with his telekinesis that proves he did it. And once he discovers she knows about it, regardless of how much he seemed to maybe genuinely like her earlier in the episode, he goes after her telekinetically with a horseshoe and then a chainsaw. Clark surprises Justin long enough for him to temporarily completely forget that he can move things with his mind, and then knocks him out. He goes off to a mental institution. Chloe and Clark make up. Lana gets love triangle face now that Chloe and Clark might be an item, and then we find out, just as Lana's about to break up with Whitney, that Whitney's dad has died. There's a funeral, and of course it's gotta be raining. There's lots of slow-motion sadness. Everybody's got love triangle face now. Then credits. Did you ever play with one of those see and say things when you were a kid? You know how they'd often get stuck where they'd usually land on one of the farm animal noises a lot more often than any of the others? If I were a see and say, the thing my spinner would land on most often would go, Captain Logan says, the Lex subplot is a lot better than the A story. I'm getting a little sick of saying it, but once again, we've got this Luthor family intrigue story giving us a lot of background to flesh out who both Lex and Lionel are at the core, and it's far more interesting and believable than anything going on in the main story. There's also less screen time devoted to it than some of the other Lex subplots we've had thus far, and it barely connects thematically in any way to the main plot thread, except for Martha's line toward the end, "Those kinds of secrets sometimes tear families apart," which I suppose really loosely creates a parallel between the secret about Pamela, Lex's caregiver, which helped push Lionel and Lex apart, and Principal Kwan's son's secret, which literally destroyed that family because it got Principal Kwan killed. Now, I really like that Lex has a mother figure and that he's big enough to admit that she doesn't deserve the way he's ignored her once he realizes that getting out of his life wasn't her fault. Their scene together at the end is very touching. Lex tells her he wishes she had been able to stay to influence his development as a child because he may have become a better person, to which she responds with, "The fact that you're here now speaks volumes about the man you've become." We continue to see equal parts manipulation and sincerity from Lex this first season, where it's clear that he's not comfortable with how much like his father he is, knowing how potentially dangerous he might be if he allows Lionel's influence to show through him too much, but it's also clear that he can fight all that when he forces himself to. I like that this episode pays off some things that have been building through the season, though not necessarily in the most satisfying ways. Finally killing off Whitney's father allows for some potential dramatic growth for that character if the show is to keep treating him like a major character we're supposed to have some sort of investment in. And as I've hinted at before, I think the show often can't decide if he's that or just the stock boyfriend to get in Clark's way of pursuing Lana. I like that the Kryptofreak actually murders someone we've heard of. For one, it's supposed to be a small town, where most people know everyone, there can only be one successful coffee shop, and if there's a car wreck, it probably involves either a Kent or a Luthor. Regardless of the far too high population number on the sign, everyone acts like it's a freaky small place, so how come everyone who dies is usually someone we've never seen in a previous episode? So that's good, but I also wish Kwan were someone that had more screen time and someone we actually kind of liked, because then the show could have explored our characters losing someone who actually sort of mattered instead of the three big contributions he did have to the show, chewing out the fire coach, trying to fire Chloe from the newspaper, and opening the door to a car full of bees. Although, he might be okay, maybe the hand brought him back to life. Clark is an oblivious idiot in this one, more so than he's ever been before. He thinks about Lana constantly, which is clearly why he forgot the tickets he was supposed to get for he and Chloe. He as much as says that. And he can't understand why she's so upset with him about it. He says she's too sensitive. Now, I understand that maybe a 15-year-old guy wouldn't be sensitive enough to understand why a girl is upset with him for spending too much time with another girl, especially if he has no romantic feelings for her. As much as I have to keep reminding myself that this 24-year-old actor is supposed to be 15, and regardless of how selfish it might make him look, I can even get kind of past the idea that he would suddenly start thinking of pursuing Chloe just because he now knows that she likes him. A high school boy will often jump at the chance to get with a girl he never would have considered before if he knows she has a crush on him. Having a girl infatuated with you in high school is a pretty big deal for heterosexual teenage males. But can't he at least have the common decency to apologize for majorly inconveniencing her? He acts like that's no big deal. What a jerk. And to really encapsulate how extremely idiotically selfish he is here, Clark goes back on the one really selfless act he performed this season, which I gave him a lot of points for, back in Shimmer. He says he regrets not going after Lana when he had the chance, and he pretty clearly seems to be talking about Shimmer when he decided not to take advantage of the situation with Whitney's dad to make his move with Lana. He regrets that? That was a really adult decision. It's bad enough that he's brooding here about how he doesn't know how to take risks and take charge of situations. Now he's even going back on the good choices he made. And it even gets worse. He's regretting that in the same episode where Whitney's dad dies, and at the funeral. As we watch him in a slow-motion depression, I can't really tell if he's feeling guilty that he was so selfish right before this terrible thing happened that's way more important than his stupid 9th grade crush, or if he is acting like this because he still can't decide which girl he wants more. The Kryptofreak is extremely lazy. Justin has no good reason to want anybody dead. Maybe this is going to make me sound a little insensitive, so I guess it's going to make me sound like Clark this episode. But dude, your drawing hand got paralyzed and you got telekinesis. Now you can draw as well or better than you ever did and like 20 times faster. So cry me a river. He says even with his new powers that nothing could make up for losing his drawing hand. Why? I could be persuaded to understand that logic, I suppose, but there's nothing to back it up. It could be because of the typical I don't want to be labeled a freak thing, but that's never brought up. He also draws Chloe a picture of herself, says it took him all night, and she doesn't even question it. And that's all just before he reveals his powers to her. So if he can convince people he's figured out how to draw with that hand and just says that it takes longer, I don't really see what the big deal is. And if he had to be yet another homicidal bad guy, why not make his loss greater? After all, that's what this episode is about. Loss. We have the loss of his drawing hand, the loss of Lex's mother, and then the loss of Whitney's father. One of these things is not like the other. Oh, I know! How about putting some other people in his car wreck? Say, a family member, a mom, a dad, a cousin, the family dog. Have something much less replaceable that he can't get back, and that's the thing that drives him to madness. I'm also baffled by the story structure with the Kryptofreak, and this is something Smallville does a lot. Right away, we know he's a killer. But then the scene where he and Chloe kiss and stuff's flying around the room is played up as really cute and clever and kind of touching. But we all know what he is, even as Chloe doesn't. Wouldn't it be more interesting if we were made to really like and care about this guy and find out later that he's a killer? The way it stands, he's just a total, complete, psychotic whack job, and it's just not interesting. He seems to sincerely like Chloe. Why not make him seem like a real person, then? Instead of having him try to kill Chloe in the most ridiculously violent way possible just because she knows too much. If he actually cared about her, wouldn't he try to make it painless if he thought he had no choice but to kill her? And then again, nobody makes any sense this episode. Not only is Justin dumb enough to draw his murders panel for panel in a comic book, but Chloe's dumb enough to tell him just where she's going right after she reads it. And questions to ask Jarell when I get to heaven: are the Smallville police hand-picked idiots? How is there no murder investigation into Principal Kwan's death? It's filed as an accident, and yet it's also reported that Kwan had the car keys with him when he died. The lights were on. The ignition was on. Unless, of course, Justin was smart enough to turn all that off. We don't know that. But even if he was, wouldn't you kind of question the street lamp on a sharp spike that Justin telekinetically used to pin Kwan to the garage door? That must have been found in the wreckage. Kind of suspicious, don't you think? I'm pretty sure a person could get out of the way of a coasting car before it hit him, and at that distance, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't die. No wonder there are so many murderers in Smallville. With the detective skills of these cops, it's too tempting to try to get away with stuff. And now let's go to the scoreboard. We've got one Kryptofreak, that's Justin Gaines. Get it? Because he loses something and then he gains something. He's telekinetic, and his villain motivation is, I got something way better than a basic human appendage, but being the bad guy, I must be angry and homicidal anyway. We've got one new S symbol or shield, that's the Metropolis Police Shield. I don't know if we had one of these before, so I'm going to go ahead and count it now. We've got one Chloe killer. We've got a new love triangle, Clark, Justin, and Chloe. We've got one instance of Kryptofreaks dating main characters. There's a new category. We've got Clark in bullet time when he jumps in front of a chainsaw. We've got one instance of convenient unconsciousness when Chloe's knocked out by a horseshoe. And we've got a car wreck. That's, of course, when Principal Kwan gets killed. And finally, we've got our first Smallville funeral. I'm going to give Crush a 1.5 out of 4. Extremely lazy Kryptofreak. Clark's taken backwards far too much from the maturity he gained earlier in the season, and this irritating Kryptofreak love triangle formula, sadly, is the foundation for more episodes down the line. Was there anything I missed in any category? Leave me a personal message on Geekvolution, and I'll be sure to add it to the count. I'm Captain Logan, and consider this episode counted.